Well, today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Washington Post beat reporter Spencer Nusbaum back again to join us. Spencer covers high school sports for the Post. He's also done some WNBA coverage. Does a great job for us. We always like to see him at our games. Spencer, great to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, glad to be back, and it was nice to see you at the Hayfield South Lakes game a couple weeks ago. Finally meet in person.
Yeah, it was. And the world has changed dramatically since that game. Well, before we get there, let's finish off football. Um, when you guys do your polls, and fair disclosure, we have a Facebook group where we talk about the Washington Post poll all the time. Um, and don't give me any special sauce, anything you can't reveal. But how do you guys vote, or how do you guys put your polls together? And do you get a lot of feedback from fans and readers?
Well, I'll start with the feedback part. The answer would be yes. We get a lot. We talk to coaches about it before, during, after the season. Who usually are the coaches are pretty tame as it stands. They'll offer their feedback in terms of who should go where, and often like where their team is in the rankings. But I think what they understand is that the Washington Post rankings matter a lot to their kids. To them as coaches, I'm not sure exactly what they feel. But yeah, in terms of the process of our rankings, usually our private school football reporter is the one who kind of handles the bulk of setting up the initial poll. So this year that was me. And then, from that point on, it's a matter of, sending that out to the three other people who cover high school football for us. And then we'll debate occasionally. I'll call them up and say, hey, how do you feel about Team X going, up, Team X going down? It's a matter of also talking to coaches and kind of getting their input where it's needed. But usually it's something that we try to figure out on our own. And because there's four of us and we're hitting every region of the DMV, we feel pretty confident in our kind of knowledge of individual teams, whereas maybe and this is not a criticism of anyone who's reading the rankings, but we feel that we have a pretty good sense of, we're judging a team down in the, Southern Maryland Athletic Conference versus a team in Prince William versus a team in Arundel County versus like a DC public high school. We're hitting all those parts. So we have pretty good knowledge of the teams, but we understand that obviously it's going to cause a lot of controversy, and um, people and teams who have a lot of knowledge like we do are going to disagree with it. And I think that's all, fine as long as it's healthy debate. And, people want to see us have they have ideas that obviously they pitch to us. They want us to have a different poll for public schools versus private schools. They want us to, some people want us to have private schools be the 1 through 10. Some people want public schools to get higher representation. We try to just give the best, most accurate, rankings that we can.
I think it's great to have one poll because they generally don't play in the same conferences anyway. Even though, like in the city championship in basketball, the private and public will eventually meet. But it is nice to have one place where you can at least try to rank all the teams in the DC area instead of, like, in Virginia, we have 6 classifications for public. We have 2 more for private. I mean, we never know who's best. And it's very frustrating for fans. So I like the way you do it. Are these debates, can they ever get kind of taxing and kind of heated? Like, for example, I know it must have been difficult times when Freedom and DeMatha weren't able to finish their game. So Freedom was ahead in the game. DeMatha, their touchdowns looked a little bit fortuitous, but who knows? It's early in the game. It's not a complete result. So that game was never finished. Freedom did win out. And then Good Counsel only lost 1 game in Ohio early, the first game. And they did everything asked of them. Are these heated debates, or generally are people, they give their points of view and it's just the vote?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of like when the four of us are deciding, heated wouldn't necessarily be the right word. We're all very level-headed people, so we get along well, and there's definitely like spirited debate. Like there have been, if we do it, for example, just over email one week, there could be 10, 15 emails going back and forth. Um, but oftentimes it's a matter of, okay, I see where you're coming from here, or I would push back, and it would be pretty simple. I can that kind of freedom DeMatha game is a great example of how something like that works. You know, being in charge of kind of setting out the initial rankings of the week. I was at that Freedom DeMatha game, and I said, "Look, the game did not finish. This is gonna probably upset a lot of people, but I know what my eyes told me, which was that Freedom was the better team that day. I know what the score told me, which is that even though the game was not finished, Freedom was ahead. Um, in terms of fortuitous touchdowns, I would say that yes, that's accurate, but they were also scored. So I didn't necessarily discount that. Um, but I felt like Freedom was the better team that day and looked like the better team overall. As we saw throughout the season, Freedom obviously was that kind of team. And again, this was no slight at DeMatha. We had them, I think, for most of the year, we had them third in the rankings. Um, and then, we had event Good Counsel. We put Freedom at number one for the first time, a public school at number one for the first time in 5 or 6 years, because of how dominant Freedom has been. And then eventually Good Counsel leaped them because they had a stronger strength of schedule. I saw them live, and it's hard to judge one team live versus another, but they look just as dominant as Freedom, and they had better wins on the schedule. So that's kind of how we ended up with that ranking.
Yeah, I think that one's hard to, or if it had been DeMatha and Freedom at the end, then it would have been tougher. But the fact that Good Counsel had that schedule, it's you probably could have gone either way, and no one could have been that angry. But strength of schedule means so much. Did you get a lot of pushback on St. John's? Now, St. John's has a lot of great players, and they had a great schedule, but they really didn't have any quality wins. They beat a pretty good DeMatha McNamara team, and they beat a pretty good Gonzaga team. But they didn't really have any quality wins, even though their schedule was tough and their players were really good. Was that a tricky one this year?
Yeah, honestly, this was a very tricky year, because St. John's, as well as, you look at QO and Flowers as well. We talk about talent, and that's, again, this isn't like the college football playoff. We aren't doing best team. We're, for the most part, doing best resume. Um, you know, St. John's, QO, Flowers had really, really, really good rosters that came up short in the end. St. John's got a lot of pushback, and I would say that, for I'm confident, where I think we had them 16th or 15th at the end of the year. Um, they played, you know, Good Counsel close. They played DeMatha close, and that matters. I know you have to have wins. I know you have to have wins. But they were a really good team this year. They had you say they had no quality wins, and they had that's for the most part true, that their local schedule was not great. They beat a team out of California that almost every national publication had as a top 100 team,
Wow.
at the end of the year, and Mission Viejo, I think, was their name. And that, I think, that had vaulted them up to number 3 or 4 at some point early in the season, because I said they crushed them. It was like 42-14 or something like that, which is, for the most part, like that's a resume win that is really hard to drop you out of the schedule. Honestly, I found that dealing with QO was probably the most difficult decision in our rankings. They were clearly, or close to clearly, the best public school in Maryland for the regular season. But you have to win in the playoffs. And so I think they ended up at 17 or something like that. Um, would I say that they're the 17th best team in the DMV? No, I would say they're probably the eighth, the ninth best team in the DMV. But they got bounced in the first round of the playoffs. So, or their first round of the playoffs.
Yeah. Spencer, do you enjoy this part of your job? Like, for example, I was telling you at South Lakes that I do a soccer poll, just Arlington, Fairfax, Arlington, Fairfax, Alexandria. And I call it the Super Seven. And the reason why I keep it to 7 is because I figure if you leave someone out, well, it's only 7. I mean, it's not like I didn't say you're one of the top 20. I just say you're not one of the top 7. So I did this poll, and I've never done anything for soccer that got more feedback. I mean, I got messages. People really cared what I thought about the 7. And I mean, you're from the Washington Post, so it speaks for itself. But do you enjoy that part of it, that people really care about what your opinion is of these teams?
I legitimately do. I like that people are engaging in our work. I think it also draws, if we didn't have the rankings, I think that would draw fewer people into our other work. And so I do like it in that aspect. I enjoy doing it. It's honestly easier to do for football than it is for basketball, where there's, in football, if a team, if say number one beats number five, they're probably also going to beat number 15. Whereas in basketball, it's a little harder to judge, and there's more results, more things to work through every week. But overall, yeah, I enjoy doing the rankings. I over time you learn to like take in the feedback and I try to not read the comments, but if I, stumble upon one, I obviously like read it and I kind of see where they're coming from or I don't see where they're coming from. But I like the healthy debate and I think that overall it's good for the sport. So yeah, I like it.
And you get the same pushback in basketball that you get in football. It's the same dialogue. And
More or less. I do the girls basketball rankings for the most part. That's what I'm kind of in charge of. So that gets, I think less of an audience per se than maybe the boys rankings do. But no, because I think the boys rankings and the football rankings probably get close to the same amount of pushback, maybe a little more for football.
well, let's start since you're doing the girls rankings. Let's start with the girls basketball this year. Last time we started with the boys. Interesting beginning to the year, at least in Virginia, and we could talk about some of the DC private school teams later. Sadie Shores, love that name. Sadie Shores has come back to Woodgrove, and they look to be one of the heavy hitters in the area.
Yeah, I watched Woodgrove live. I was hoping we would get to this. They're the most fun I've had watching a basketball team on the boys or girls side this season. As you said, Sadie Shores is incredible. Angelina Nice, who's also a Division I commit, is great. There's not a game or there's not a game out there where they're not going to combine for 40 points in some form or fashion. They dropped, I think, 102 last week. They dropped, I think, in somewhere in the 80s a few days later. They play fast. They play as if there's a shot clock, and as honestly as if there's a shot clock that says like 10 or 12 seconds. So it's really fun to watch them play. Sadie Shores is really incredible, and I say that they combine for 40 points every game. They also have a great supporting cast. They have a really quality freshman who I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head. But yeah, they're a team that I don't know if I see them losing to a public school this year. They are they're a bona fide Virginia, state championship contender. So yeah, they're really fun to watch.
Do they have any tough games on their schedule this year?
I think they've kind of gotten the bulk of those out of the way. I'll have to kind of
No.
circle back. They're not in class six. So they're not necessarily playing all these other schools, but they started the year off with Madison. They were at the She Got Game tournament and played a really tough team out of Florida that I think has won some state championships or competed for some and beat them. So yeah, I'm hoping to get out to another game this season, but I can't say that their schedule is super tough.
Well, one day, hopefully, we'll stop the madness and the class five, and class six will be together. And so, because my daughter goes to Riverside now, which is the same size as Yorktown. So I can't understand why one's a Division five, one's a Division six. So we transferred to the same size school, but now we went down in classification. So I'm letting my daughter down. So next on the list at 11 is Gainesville. I haven't seen them play. Gainesville, this brand new school, is good in everything. Have you got a chance to see Gainesville yet?
I haven't seen them live yet. I watched them a few times last year and obviously keep up with that program. It's kind of so them and Osborne Park are in the same district. I watched Osborne Park yesterday or 2 days ago beat our ranked Centerville team, which surprised me. Chrissy Kelly is kind of the Mike Desmond of girls basketball. She's very honest about where her team is. She's a tough coach, tough love, and I say that in obviously the nicest way. I really enjoy talking with her. That team, I'll talk about Osborne Park and then I'll talk about Gainesville. Osborne Park is basically all freshmen and sophomores, and they've been in the state tournament for 4 straight years. And they beat a really talented Centerville team last night. So Osborne Park's been kind of the head of that district for a long time. Gainesville, to a sense, has to prove itself, but because they're experienced, they have a lot of junior and senior talent on that roster. They lost a kid to a private school, one of their top two players from last year, and have not missed a beat. They have a young player averaging a double-double. Uh, they're really kind of a force this season. I think that, if they split games with Osborne Park, that's a good sign, that Osborne Park has maybe figured itself out. But yeah, I still think Gainesville is probably that other right now, the top contender in Northern Virginia Class 6. But what I've learned this season is that there's a lot of in Class 6, there's a lot of parity this season. So they could easily, this is no slight to Gainesville, but they could be out of the rankings in 2 weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised. Or they could be, the one standing, at top at the end, and I wouldn't be too surprised as well.
Yeah. Well, Centerville had a huge win early in the year. I can't remember who it was against, but it was a good opponent by 30. So I know they got a transfer from Westfield. I know Claire King is a point guard for them. It's supposed to be a really good floor general. Were you impressed with Centerville, or are
Yes.
they as good as they appear on paper?
Yes, it was kind of a matter of Osborne Park figured out how to defend them. Centerville was just going to the cup every time, and it worked really well in the first half, and it did not work in the second half. And it wasn't a matter of a coach not adjusting or whatnot. It was just a matter of, a team just did not figure it out. They're really well coached. Joe McLean is over there. They haven't won a district title in a decade, which makes sense given how tough that district is. But they have a perfect starting five. They have a really strong player in Hannah Wakefield, coming back soon. But yeah, they're top to bottom, honestly, you know, pure talent. They're probably the most talented team in Class 6. And I assume that they are going to figure it out. And, in the Concord district, you have to figure it out. So
Yeah.
um, that makes sense. But yeah, Centerville is really talented this year. Janiyah Marion is the name that I really see stand out. She's kind of their lead guard, next to Claire. Um, they're not the biggest team, although they do have some size in the front court. But yeah, they have some undersized guards who really know how to score. And I know that they're going to figure things out.
Yeah, and also I wanted to mention I read your great article about the Osborne Park game. Peyton Walker is the name of the freshman that's so good at Osborne Park. Is that correct?
Yeah, and they have it's unbelievable. They have 11 underclassmen, which I think is the most I've heard of any school having this year. To beat what I consider to be the most talented team in Northern Virginia, with a roster that, again, like, I'm not gonna share any state secrets here, but Chrissy Kelly said the team does not really know how to practice like a state championship contender yet. They work really, really hard, but they need to elevate themselves every day as a good program does. And they're not quite there yet. So for them to pull off that kind of win, and Chrissy to think that there's still a ton of room to grow, is really, impressive.
Yeah. Well, let's go to my alma mater, Robinson, everyone's favorite school, coached by TJ Dade. Got to the state tournament again last year. They have the post player Georgia Simonson. I feel like she's been in high school for 10 years, and she's only a junior. I know they lost one or two, which is fine. They seem to always be ready for tournament time. Do you agree Robinson should be tough this year?
Yeah, I watched them play Langley,
Oh, that's right.
a
Yeah.
week or so ago. The reason you probably think that they have been, or that, Georgia's been in high school forever is because her sister, was one of the
Oh, that's
stars
right.
of the team,
Yeah.
who just graduated last year. So she was one of the big pieces that they missed. Yeah, Georgia was the region player of the year. She's incredible. Really, really, really good post player. It's a matter of they're kind of young around her as well, so it's a matter of figuring out where else you're going to get scoring from. You know, last week was the first time they had let up 40 points to a public school, and it didn't happen this year, and it didn't happen last year. So yeah, um, they're really good, and I think that they're gonna figure it out, but they need to. And this is no indictment on the rest of their roster, but they need to figure out, how they're going to score when she's triple teamed, because that's happening on every possession.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Langley. Amanda Baker does a great job there. And they have a player. I read your article about Anya Rahman, who is a fantastic scorer. Every year Langley's in it as well. I think the Liberty is not always the strongest district. So they kind of benefit from, even if the regular season is not great, they're always in contention for the postseason.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I will say Langley, by beating Robinson, is kind of on that level this season where they are, they handled their non-district games. They've won almost every game by single digits. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on, that they're both good in those games and also maybe need to figure out how to put their foot on the gas a little more.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's completely right. The district isn't always up, but Amanda Baker, just like TJ Dade, both great coaches, and Anya Rahman is a singular talent. Who again, like, I'm kind of surprised she hasn't transferred to a private school. She's that kind of kid, but and she's a little undersized, but um, I always like when the top kids stay in public schools. So it's really fun to watch her play.
Yeah, and she gets play for Amanda, and also the Duke coach, guy played at Duke, Clay Buckley, I believe, even though we don't like Duke around here. Well, we're talking about great coaches. Let's talk about Fred Priester. I believe Oakton is undefeated so far this year.
That is the case. I will say Fred and I have talked a lot in the past few seasons. I didn't expect them to do this year. So I haven't really caught up with Fred yet. I haven't caught much of an Oakton. I haven't caught an Oakton game yet. But Fred's been around forever. He knows how to coach his kids. They're never the biggest team, and yet they always have this great defensive identity. Yeah, that reminds me. I have to catch up with Fred because they've been really good so far, and I can't really speak to what they've done or how they've done it. They lost to Robinson like 40-18 in the state semis last year, so I was like, and then they graduated their best player, so I was like, maybe they need to figure some things out. Clearly they figured it out, so kudos to Oakton.
Yeah, Caitlin Crump is doing really well at Christopher Newport, and I've heard that Coach Priester is being really nice to officials this year.
Yeah.
Not true. Let's go to Madison and our good friend Kirsten Stone. She quietly won 4 state titles in a row. I mean, maybe because of COVID, sometimes we didn't. They get kind of lost in the shuffle because things are what they're going on in the world. Huge accomplishment. Last year had to be probably the most surprising. The team that they beat in that state final. When I looked at that team, I'm like, there's no way they're beating these girls. They had Pete Wolfick's daughter, Mia Wolfick, and they had these knockdown shooters from the outside. Anyway, I know Coach Kirsten lost everybody, but no one's going to take that game for granted.
Yeah, no, not at all. I was talking to her before the season, and she was like, yeah, we lost a lot of players. It's hard to whatever, come back from that. And I said, and she said, but I've already cried wolf to you once, so I know that I'm not going to get you again. Now obviously they have started off slower this year than I think any year during that state championship run. Even a little bit before that. I watched them lose to Woodgrove pretty handily in the season opener. But yeah, she is the best coach in any sport that I've covered. I can say that pretty confidently. And so yeah, they'll figure it out in February or March. I'm not concerned. But I am looking forward to seeing how they figure things out. They have a really talented player in Stella Gugukas. They have other. It's a balanced roster, but she's definitely the star. But yeah, I think they're going to figure it out by February, March.
And Madison wins in every sport.
Yeah.
Just other few teams, just to see if you have any comment on them, but they were successful last year and they're perennial challengers: West Potomac, Edison, Hayfield. Those are probably 3 teams we'll see somewhere in the postseason, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of them live this season. West Potomac, I think, had a really hard schedule to start, and they're figuring things out. Edison, coached by Diane Lewis. She's going to have them in contention every year, although they lost their best player. So again, that's something that needs to figure itself out by January, late January, early February. And I say that they graduated their best player. And yeah, Hayfield's kind of a new kid on the block in terms of girls basketball. So yeah, I haven't seen them live, so I don't want to comment on things I haven't seen. But I'm excited to probably get out to a Hayfield Edison game at some point on probably the boys and girls side. Early in January and February.
Oh, great. Well, before we turn to boys, let's wrap up the girls. Any strong opinions? I obviously said, well, Friends, St. John's, Bishop McNamara, and also in Virginia, we have Paul VI and Potomac. What are you seeing in terms of down the road for the girls private preview?
Yeah, for the girls, to me, it feels like a really strong top 3, and then it's just anyone's guess beyond that. with again like Sidwell, St. John's, and McNamara. They've all played really strong national competition, beaten that competition, save for one loss for each team. I'm not betting against Sidwell to lose a game until I see it happen. Although Bullis is strong in that district, I don't think Sidwell is going to lose another local game this year. St. John's and McNamara have to play each other, so I'm going to assume they split those games. McNamara is one that's ranked really high in the national polls. St. John's is kind of creeping up there as well. Just because McNamara has so much talent. They have Madison McDaniel, who's one of the top 20 players in the country. But yeah, I think it's going to be those three at top. And then, Elizabeth Seton's on the rise. Potomac School has really surprised me this year, although they probably shouldn't. I probably should have seen that coming. And again, Bishop Ireton's also been really strong. So yeah, it's a good overall year on the girls' side.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the boys. And you mentioned that we saw each other at the South Lakes Hayfield game. South Lakes was dominant that night. The defense was incredible. They have transfers from O'Connell to add to Jordan Scott, Brian Kennedy. I forgot Sol Vita. Just so many great players back. Aiden Billings. But anyway, I don't know if you were out in Patriot in Oaksville, but Patriot had a comprehensive win over South Lakes that day. So I think maybe we're a little bit in flux in terms of who's the pick on the boy side.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had circled that game on my calendar since I started putting together games to cover. And then I got sick 2 days before, so I wasn't able to make it out. And I'll kind of spoil this. I don't envision a world where they don't meet up again in the playoffs. They are the clear top two in Northern Virginia. But yeah, no, I think when you talk about great coaching, great rosters, great leadership, those are what those two programs have, and then they just add a shit ton of talent on top of it. So yeah, it's really impressive to see what both schools have done. I know Patriots shot really well from three, and South Lakes didn't shoot well from three. That's a bit of an anomaly for South Lakes. That's not an anomaly for Patriot. I've talked to Sherman Rivers. He's said that this is as good a roster as last year, and it's a better shooting 3-point roster. They added Tay Barber, who's obviously the Harvard commit. So yeah, I'm kicking myself that I couldn't make it out to the game. But yeah, Patriot and South Lakes are the clear top two in North Virginia. I'm curious. I'm assuming you were out of that game. Like, what did you see from it?
I was. I mean, Isaiah Vick also had a nice performance against Jordan Scott. Jordan Scott is a 4-star prospect, obviously, and he's had a great year. Just long arms, great shooter, high IQ player. And Isaiah did a really good job against him. I think he had like 17 points, very active. It was weird when we saw South Lakes against Hayfield, their defense was smothering. I mean, can you imagine even getting an open shot that against them? And I saw them also against Woodson, and I think I saw them one more time, Battlefield. And I mean, Patriots, they were wide open. They had wide open threes. So, you never want to talk about officials. Jordan had a call called against him in the first 2 minutes where he reached back to find out his blockout assignment, and got called in a foul on that, which is that's kind of a strange call. You don't really see that called very much. And then he got a legal screen called later. So he was in foul trouble, but he still played a lot, played well. And, they still did not, I mean, Patriot was clearly better on this night. So, obviously South Lakes has got tons of talent and I wouldn't bet against them. But yeah, that game was definitely a head scratcher. Well,
Yeah, just to hop in real quick because I'm writing I'm finishing up a feature story on Jordan right now, and I want to make sure I get this in. You'll never see his face change during a game, and so he kind of comes across as always just a really talented kid. He is one of the most interesting backstories of any kid that I've covered. His mom obviously being Christy Winters Scott, huge head in women's sports, and kind of a big face in women's basketball. He was raised kind of watching the WNBA and watching women's basketball. And you can see that in his game, just his understanding of angles, his kind of play below the rim. I don't have to double check this. I don't know if he's ever dunked in a game. I'm sure it's happened maybe once or twice. but yeah, he's kind of unbelievable in kind of the way he was raised. Being in that basketball family, being in her pouch, just watching her coach at South Lakes and coach, she coached in college as well. So I just want to say, like, I'm writing this story on Jordan, and I think that he's a really interesting character. And Northern Virginia hasn't had a top 100 public school recruit, I think, in 19 years. So I have to double check on that. So it's interesting he stayed at South Lakes too. But he's someone, like, if you're watching the show and you're trying to pick a game to go out to just to watch a player, he's not going to drop 30, but he's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, he's the quietest scorer that I ever seen. I think the player you're talking about was Scotty Reynolds from Herndon. Was the last time we've had a maybe a 4-star recruit. He's still playing pro in Europe. And I also want to say about Jordan's dad, Jerome.
Yes.
Jerome, who played at Miami, also played at South Lakes. Unlike most players, he almost invented his own move. He had his own type of crossover in high school. It was very distinctive, and like a lot of players talked about that back then. And Jerome was also a really talented player. I think he averaged like 17 for Miami one year. So
Yeah.
a really talented family. Well, let's move on to Potomac Falls, class 5, I believe, right? The 4. Is it 5? It's 5.
Oh, fine. Yeah.
5. Yeah. They've been perfect this year.
They have, and it hasn't been close. I think they've won all their games by double digits, or almost their games by double digits. That's another case of this is great coaching that you get in year and out. I haven't seen them live, so again, I don't want to speak too much on what makes them run, what makes them go. But yeah, I don't want to say they've surprised me, because again, they're a program that every year is going to compete, for a spot in the state tournament. But I think that uh, I don't know who. I think it's Matthew Hatfield for Virginia Preps has them as the second best team in Virginia Class 5, behind Woodside, who beat Patriot earlier this year. I think that's fair. They again, I don't want to speak too much on what their roster looks like, because I don't want to say something I don't know. But yeah, they're a program that they're number one on my list for teams that I need to see going forward, because we have them ranked, and it isn't, I guess, too much of a surprise.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you got a chance to see Alexandria City yet. They have a sophomore point guard, Bivens, I believe is his name,
Yeah.
who's been offered by Illinois, which is unbelievable. And they have Kai Robinson. Kai's just been unbelievable. He scored 28 against South Lakes. They've had a couple of injuries lately, I've heard, but they've still been able to win. Have you got a chance to see Alexandria City yet?
Yeah, they've got really good. I've seen them kind of on tape. They have really good wins on their roster, or wins on their schedule. As you mentioned, Darius and Kai are there. I can't say there is a more than 2 or 3 better duos in the state, or in Northern Virginia, I should say, than those two. Really good roster around. Tyrone Sally always has his teams ready, but to kind of work ourselves way out of cliches. They're a team that should figure it out. At some point soon. I know they lost to South Lakes. It was like, I think, a 10 or 11 point game at the end, but it was close through 2.5, 3 quarters. And then South Lakes pulled away. I will say, in that district, it's so hard to know what's going to happen. Woodson, even though they lost a few days ago, West Potomac, I really see those as kind of the top 3 contenders in that district right now. But top to bottom, you ask any coach around, they'll say, oh, if you give them some truth serum, they'll say that's the toughest district in Northern Virginia. So that tests you really well for the playoffs. But it's so hard to figure out what's going to happen kind of in those district games, because it's so deep in a way that just a lot of other districts aren't.
Yeah. Woodson has those twins, I believe, post players, at least brothers, and they have a freshman point guard, and they're off to a really good start under Doug Craig. Marshall, now I was at the Marshall Yorktown game, and Marshall had a really consistent season last year, where they defensively they were awesome, and they came into the Yorktown game, and it was a really nice crowd over at Marshall, and Yorktown dominated the fourth quarter and got out of there with the win. Very surprising.
Yeah, I was surprised by that as well. I had just written about them a couple days before. They're really interesting. I love talking to Jerry Lynn. He's a great coach, great guy. I know you've had him on your podcast as well, so shout out to Jerry. Last year they were one of the slowest programs in Northern Virginia, just in terms of the pace they played with. They've obviously picked it up a lot this season with losing all that front court depth. Jose Fudd, Omar Phillips, and Jason Penn, I believe I have all those last names correct, are a really good trio. Technically guards, although Jose's moved more to the four this season. But yeah, they're able to stretch teams out, which I think, again, you're not playing in the strongest district, to be candid, which means that you kind of have to have a way to increase volatility when looking way ahead to the playoffs. The best way to do that is by playing really good defense and by shooting the three, and they do both of those things really well. So yeah, they're maybe not going to sniff our top 20 anytime soon just because of that loss to Yorktown. I think if they had stayed undefeated, they would probably be the next team up. But again, I didn't see the Yorktown game, so maybe you can speak more to that. But yeah, I think that Marshall is a real contender to reach the state tournament after getting bounced a game early last year.
Yeah. Well, Wakefield, Coach Bentley, one of my
Yeah.
panels of coaches, got on me because I said they had a decent year last year, and he reminded me that was the first year they didn't make regionals in so many years. But I would have loved to have seen his face when he was informed that there's a 6'3" all-league transfer just enrolled into Wakefield this year. And his name was Carlton Young, and he probably thought someone was playing a joke on him. But Wakefield is back.
Yes, Wakefield is back. Another program where I haven't talked to their coach yet this season. Just because, frankly, I did not, they can use this as motivation. I expected nothing out of them. I did not know that they were going to be this good this season. They're probably one of our 5 to 10. I'd put them in like the 5 to 10 range in terms of best teams in Northern Virginia public schools, just based on their record and their schedule of what they've done so far. As you mentioned, Carlton, someone I've seen a little bit just in terms of when it comes up on Twitter and whatnot. But yeah, another coach I kind of have to get my hands on and see them. They're probably behind Potomac Falls. They're number 2 on my list of teams I need to see at the start of 2024.
Yeah. Well, we saw Hayfield that night, and we saw some good things in the first half. Obviously, South Lakes has so much size, and the length was difficult for Hayfield, but they passed the ball really well. The McFarland brothers, Phoenix Card, they, as a team, all starting 5, and I love Andy Ramirez. The starting 5 passes the ball extremely well. This is not going to be an easy team to beat in the tournament.
No, it's not. And the thing with Hayfield, again, like, Los has had them figure it out. That's a thing where if you have that sort of program, you win 2 straight titles, you have a championship DNA. It's such a stupid word, but you have kind of an identity and you know how to work to get there. I almost thought the roster wasn't going to be there just because they lost kind of their 2 perimeter, their guards before the season that they expected to have.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was talking with Los and he was like, yeah, that's a real bummer for us because they scheduled a really, hard slate of games. If they had those 2 guys, they would probably have been competing in those games. Whereas, they were losing most of them and then all of a sudden they beat Woodson. I haven't gotten to go back and look at that game. But to beat a program of that caliber, it is really kind of put me on notice. Again, they were doing things in the South Lakes game that really impressed me. You mentioned, again, like the ball movement. Defensively, I think they still have a little bit to go to reach where they've been the past couple of seasons. That was an underrated part of what made them so good the past 2 years. But I think just as I was saying with Madison on the girls' side, I think that they're going to figure it out. You mentioned Andy Ramirez. Los loves that kid. You can hear it in his voice. I'm sure that Hayfield is going to figure it out. But again, losing all that talent and then losing 2 kids that you expected to kind of keep things steady, bring the ball up and whatnot, make those simple entry passes to Owen. That's something that's just going to take time. But yeah, watch them if you're going to go out to one of their games, watch them in February. Don't watch them in early January because I think they're still working their way through even with that Woodson win.
Yeah, I did catch the Woodson game, and Ramirez was awesome. He gets on the floor for loose balls, takes charges, passes the ball, and Woodson's. It's funny. Woodson definitely had the size advantage. But they struggled. They seemed off. They settled for 3 pointers. Coach Craig's a great coach too. He'll definitely figure them out. They have a really good team. I did want to Hayfield's big guy Pottinger also played well. I forgot to mention him. And Woodson's point guard. He's their sophomore point guard, I believe. Sean Burke is the Woodson soccer coach. It's his son. I believe his name is Theo.
Theo,
And
yeah.
yeah, he had a nice game. So I wanted to shout him out. Sean's a friend of mine. So there's a couple other teams that we should probably talk about. West Potomac, Tuscarora, and Potomac. Potomac undefeated, and they've been the eastern part of Prince William County is so talent rich in basketball, and this is the year. Forest Park is strong. Again, they went to state last year. We should probably talk about them too. But anyway, what about those? Any opinions of those four?
Yeah, I'll start with West Potomac and Potomac. I've seen Potomac live, which I always like to, see that program. Coach Mills in his second year, seems to have those guys figuring things out. And this is also, I'll say, the case with both Potomac and then kind of far away West Potomac. Um, Both of those programs are tough, and that's a dumb word to use because every coach likes to say, "Oh, we're so tough, we're mentally headstrong, we're physically headstrong." No, those programs really embody that. If you play them, and the thing is, there's talent in those areas too, as you said. With Potomac in particular, Kenny de Guzman, TJ Bethea, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Those two really, really can play. Kenny is kind of your typical elite level guard, where he's going to, find his teammates, he's going to score. But there's just an air of kind of leadership about him this season that I think watching live, I was able to say, okay, if you're following his lead, you're going to be okay. As you said, they're undefeated. And again, there's 6'3" guys, 6'5" guys everywhere on that roster. So they're going to be able to hound you. But yeah, with them and then West Potomac as well. West Potomac, you see it in the fact that they've won the district championship 2 straight seasons from, I think, the 4 and the 5 seed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they have it figured out. They know how to play in February and March. I talked to their coach a couple weeks ago, so the names on the roster unfortunately are not sticking to my brain. But again, they're a roster that's deep. They're particularly deep this season, which maybe they haven't necessarily had that in the past years. And what I remember, from talking with them is that they have a roster full of two-way guys. Now, in years past, they've had guys. If you want to see the floor on West Potomac, you have to play defense. That's kind of been the standard. But this year, it seems like everyone in that starting five can also score, and then they have some guys off the bench as well. So yeah, West Potomac is a team that they haven't been perfect yet, but I am really looking forward to seeing them play in person because they are just unbelievably tough. And they have the talent to back it up this year. So they might win the district again. It probably won't come from the 4 or the 5.
Yeah. Coach Allison does a great job. Did you want to mention Tuscarora or Forest Park as well? Have you get a chance to see those two?
Yeah, I saw them quite a bit last year. Kept up with them this year. Forest Park has the big guy, Brandon Nadozi, who's so fun to watch. He's like, if you want to be reminded of, again, this was before I was born, but if you want to be reminded of what basketball looked like in the early 90s, Brandon Nadozi is that Charles Oakley kind of, throwback big who he's going to get 20 points and 12 to 15 boards. They lost their starting point guard, who was going to be a junior and seemed to really be taking off. Ethan, last name starts with an S. Lost him before the season, unfortunately, to an injury. But yeah, they've been good so far. I think when you have a kid like Brandon on the roster, you have to be able to, feed him the ball and work around him. And they did that last year, but again, losing your starting point guard, you have to reconfigure things. And then who was the other team you mentioned?
Did we say West? We said West Potomac. We said Forest Park. No, that was both of them. And I wanted to shout out Coach Mack, such a nice guy from
Yes.
Forest Park, and also Coach Howson, of course, from West Potomac.
Yes. And then with
Tuscarora. Tuscarora. Yeah.
Tuscarora. I love talking to Michael Newkirk at Tuscarora. He's a great guy. They had Jaden Johnson, kind of
Yeah,
leading things for them. I think, was it West Potomac that came back and beat them early in the year?
that's
Uh,
right. Yep.
yeah. But again, Tuscarora, it's hard to kind of figure out where some of these Loudoun County programs are at just because they're all over the place, playing in different classes um, and whatnot. But yeah, Tuscarora is probably the clear top team out there, along with I guess Potomac Falls. But yeah, no, I haven't seen Tuscarora yet this year. But from what I saw last year, they're able to kind of control the pace of the game. Again, with Jaden, they have probably the best player on the floor 9 times out of 10. And then, I guess they're, still kind of um, seeing where they're going to be in March. But yeah, I guess I'll have to see them as well too to speak more to that.
Yeah. Well, Spencer, look, this has been amazing. Thanks for taking time this close to Christmas. I did want to end by quickly talking about the rest of the boys' top 20 private and also Maryland, DC. I know Paul VI lost last night to a nationally known program. Forgot what it was.
Yeah, Montverde with a Cooper flag.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I know they have a loss now. Gonzaga's up there. Bullis, Sybil Friends, always. You can never count them out. DeMatha's back. Bishop O'Connell, Jackson Reed, solid. These names are pretty much the same as last year. But anyway, what about your preview for private public Maryland, DC?
Yeah. This is a case where I think if you look at like ESPN or Max Prep's top 25, I think like 6 or 7 of the schools, probably 6 of the schools are in that national top 25 caliber. Whereas in the girls' side, I think it's 3 of them. So it's really deep. It's really fun. I'm hoping to get out to some private games when I have the chance. Although with my schedule, it's tough. But yeah, I think that, and even like St. John's too, they won the WCAC last year. We started them unranked, which I think made people unhappy, but they had basically an entire new roster and a new coach. So it was okay. You get the benefit of the doubt, but only so much.
You were getting
They've
back at
been
them
really
you
good
were
so
getting
far.
back at them for football.
Yeah, exactly. They beat again, they have a private dominant schedule, but they beat Largo, who we had ranked 9th, and now have ranked like 15th or something by 30, with Cam Ward, who's along with Jordan Scott, like 2 of the best public school prospects we've seen out of the GMV in a long time. Um, yeah, so I think that it's going to be really fun to follow along and see how those private schools, because none of them are going to, Paul VI is, and Paul VI doesn't even have their top kid back yet. Like he's been out indefinitely. The big guy whose name I could not tell you, but he's one of the top. I'm focused on the public schools, but he's one of the top 20-25 recruits in the country. But yeah, Paul VI is kind of, they're the past 2 years, like I'll be blunt, they've been the Kings of December, and they haven't necessarily made it out of the WCAC. But yeah, they're the top team, but they, any of those top 5, 6 can beat each other on any night. And then Jackson Reed is the DC power, who compete with those schools as well. And then I see South Lakes and Patriot as well as kind of in that upper echelon where they can't recruit their talent, but as far as public schools goes, they are kind of the top of the class. And then Blake, who's kind of just been a whatever program for a while, they have the one of the top freshmen in the country in Baba. I do not know how to pronounce his last name, but he's someone who's like, I think he's worked with Kevin Durant before. He's 6'9", 6'10". So hopefully I get to see some Blake this year as well, because interesting dynamic there.
Yeah. Well, look, that was a comprehensive overview of what's going on and also preview what's to come. I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me, Spencer, today. I know it's a last minute Christmas shopping to do, but let's get together later on in the year, and hopefully I'll run into you at another one of these games.
Yeah, for certain. I'm hoping to speak a little more knowledgeably on the boys' side next time. I've spent probably 70% of my manpower and my resources following the girls' side and hoping to play catch up on the boys. So yeah, hopefully to talk a little more about Potomac Falls and Tuscarora and some of those Loudoun counties next time.
Oh yes, plenty of time, and I'm actually glad because I do get a lot of pushback that I don't do enough girls ball. So we did girls first, and then we did it more comprehensively. So I'm actually happy. So people will maybe be nice to me for the holidays. So
Yeah, be nice to Julian.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, Spencer, again, this has been great. Let's keep in touch and have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, buddy. Thank you. Take care. Bye.